Visitors often comment on the energy or vibe that they feel while at Horizon House. Since COVID-19 struck, future residents have posed some great questions about community living during a pandemic, primarily how events, activities, and programs have been affected. Since Horizon House is such a resident-driven community, who better to answer these questions than our residents? Today we will pose the most frequently asked questions to generous residents who have agreed to share their answers and insights. Dr. George Counts is a retired physician, teacher, and researcher. A distinguished alumnus of the University of Iowa and the University of Oklahoma, he worked as a professor of medicine at the University of Washington and was a Career Achievement Award recipient of Infectious Diseases Society of America. He moved to Horizon House in 2016 and has been a member of the Health Advisory Group, which you will learn more about later, since its inception earlier this year. Peter Shapiro enjoyed careers in law, civic engagement, and theater production. He is a passionate volunteer who has served on multiple boards. Since moving to Horizon House in 2017, Peter has been a member of the Horizon House Residents Council as secretary and currently serves as Residents Council president. Today he will share information about how the approximately 70 committees and special interest groups have kept the community alive and vibrant. Peter Corning is a retired U.S. naval aviator, Newsweek magazine reporter, professor of human biology at Stanford University, director at the Institute for the Study of Complex Systems, and co-owner of an organic farm on San Juan Island. He moved to Horizon House in 2017 and continues work as an author. Shulamit Dechter earned a PhD in anthropology and worked in financial management of nonprofit organizations and Native American tribal health programs for the past 25 years. Prior to that, she was in academia. Shulamit moved to Horizon House in August of 2019. Sue Jones is a retired high school teacher, college lecturer, and attorney. She and her husband Larry joined the Future Resident List in 2004 and eventually moved to Horizon House in 2018. Prior to making Horizon House the place she calls home, Sue served as a Horizon House Board of Trustee member, including a term as president. Sally Wren worked as a stockbroker at Merrill Lynch for 24 plus years. She moved to Horizon House with her husband John in November of 2019. Right after moving in, they enjoyed their annual vacation in Hawaii and were barely unpacked and settled in their new home when the pandemic started. What makes you most grateful to be at Horizon House during a pandemic?
What makes me most grateful to be at Horizon House is how supportive the community is of each other and how everybody is on the team to do everything together to make things more pleasant and just having every need taken care of and in the best way. And everyone is doing the best they can, and you can see it, and it's wonderful. My list of gratitudes go on.
I find that there really is no one thing that makes me grateful to be at Horizon House. It's really a combination of things, the very combination of things that brought us here in the first place. The fact that this is a community that has been in existence for over 50 years and has deep experience and has done a lot of problem solving to make this a comfortable and safe and inspiring place to live. The fact that the basic values that are exhibited in our staff here, they are caring and always ready to meet our needs, and we feel very secure and confident in the staff. The facilities, which are really extraordinary, and I don't need to go into the list on those things. I'm sure that you all have information about that, but that is something that we benefit from every day. The so-called secret sauce, the range of somewhere around 70 different activities and committees and ways of being entertained that are all organized and provided by the Residents Council itself. But I would say most of all, the other residents who live here, we really have, I think, a remarkable set of people. Very interesting, very accomplished, very sociable. This is an environment in which you find yourself drawn in and really inspired by the other people around you that live with you here, and so that combination still exists. And in the pandemic, it's a little harder to do some things because so many things have been curtailed. But in many different ways, we have adapted to that, and that's consistent with the core attributes of Horizon House.
I'm grateful to be at Horizon House for many reasons, but one of them is that we are no longer in our large house that took a lot of time to take care of. The fact that we're in a community of people who are absolutely wonderful, active, many of them old friends already, means that we don't have to bear the whole burden alone of a house with a lot of steps, with more housekeeping, with having to figure out how we're going to get meals, do our own cooking, not go to restaurants. So leaving our house and coming here before the pandemic just happens to have been a blessing in our case.
I think what I'm most grateful for is just being here. It's been a remarkable experience. I moved here 14 months ago, and so I've experienced both the normal Horizon House and Horizon House under COVID, and so I know this is something to look forward to, but also experiencing this now tells me something about what Horizon House is capable of that I would never have expected before.
I think the most grateful aspects of living at Horizon House are the fact that it provides a protective environment. But more importantly, all of the needs that we have as residents can be met. The best example of that, of course, are the meals. If we were in our own apartments during this pandemic, we would have to deal with the issue of either preparing or going out for meals. That is a big advantage.
What makes me most grateful is, of course, personal to me, and let me tell you the story in a short form. We made the decision to move and moved in about 3 years ago. My wife had already at that time begun a course of degenerative disease, and I was her primary caregiver on a daily basis. So when the opportunity to move occurred, we decided to do that. And the continuum of my life since then has been aided so much by being in this community. While I was taking care of her, there were things that were provided for me that I didn't have to worry about. I didn't have to cook the meals that she used to cook. I didn't have to do all the chores that we had to each do. We had house cleaning, things of that sort of made it so much easier for me to concentrate on my love and care for Jan. And then during the course of it, there was support from the community of counselors for people who are caregivers, not just myself, there were quite a few. And then after she passed, likewise, support, emotional support from the community, of course, but from the staff that has the experience of helping people through those difficult times.
What has been the most surprising benefit of being in a community during a pandemic?
The most surprising thing to me was how efficient, quickly, that both the community, the staff, the management adjusted when we had to have the shutdown for the virus. It was just incredible, the amount of support, responsibility that everyone gave in the whole community. It was truly a community coming together, and it was wonderful to witness.
Well, the most surprising attribute really wasn't surprising, and that is a continuation of the values and the resources and the and the staff and the facilities we have, some of which have been curtailed, but in many ways we have adapted and the staff have adapted, and we've been able to continue to be active and involved, so I've found that for me, the continuity and this basic sense of security that we have here continues to be most valuable.
The most surprising benefit has been the amount of services that have been available to us during the pandemic. That has been something that we didn't expect. We did a lot of eating out in the dining room. We didn't expect that when we really couldn't leave our apartments for a time, that all the food would be delivered, all our meals would be delivered, our mail was delivered, our packages. The care with which Horizon House worried about taking care of all of the residents and making it as easy as possible under a very difficult situation was important. Even more to me was the realization that the administration here understood that this community was frantic and hungry for information. And so the amount of information that we got from the very beginning helped not only by the assurance of the administrators that they were working with the health department, but having a group of our own retired medical personnel who live here as part of the people who communicated with us. That was a big surprise and something we were able to communicate to our kids in the East who were worried about us, and we were full of information. Never would have had that much information, I don't think. We were just living at home and reading the newspapers.
I never knew to what extent a community would be important, and the benefit to me is great because I'm very community-minded, but I also have a wonderful apartment that I can go back to and get away from the community when needed. I think the most important thing for me about being in the community is the sense that I owe something to this community. It's what keeps me from doing stupid things in terms of taking care of myself under COVID, because I feel that I have an obligation to the community not to get sick and not to infect other people. That's a wonderful feeling to have about where you live.
I've been surprised at how able the institution is to provide entertainment benefits just by living in our apartments. I'm thinking especially of movies, educational programs, and even exercise programs which can be provided directly to our apartments.
You know, nothing was really surprising. I'll tell you why. My wife was in real estate, and she was real estate sales, and she worked a lot with people who were 10, 15 years ahead of us on the chronological scale. And she was helping them not only deal with selling their property, but also working with them to look around at the community of opportunities that are in the area for retirement living and continual care. And she looked at just about every opportunity that was here in Seattle, over on the east side and so on, as she was working with the folks and seeing their reactions and learning herself of what these communities were like. And after a while, it became absolutely clear to her and through her to me that Horizon House was the place to be. So it was not a surprise that it turned out to be the case.
What has been the most difficult part of being at Horizon House during this time?
Oh, I grew up, like I said, in a large family, and I'm a hugger, and I miss, being with family, of course, but I miss being out and saying, oh, can I give you an air hug? Because, or just meeting people and touching. That's the thing I miss the most.
For me, for us, it's been mostly the same things that have been a problem for other people outside Horizon House. The fact that it's difficult, for a while impossible, to meet with family, to do shopping, to go to restaurants or the theater, all the things we love to do out in the community that we no longer can do because they're curtailed here as everywhere else. So I don't feel particularly burdened by living here. We are really sharing the same experience that most of the rest of the country are experiencing.
In my case, my spouse had mild cognitive disabilities when we came. We knew that. We came somewhat early because of that. The pandemic has not helped his increasing dementia. So what's been difficult is living in our apartment with the confusion that's going along with Larry as he develops that, and the fact that it's hard to get the kind of help that we might be able to get if things were a little bit more open. Not being able to see our families, even though it's available to hire help, some of it is just difficult to find and quite hard to watch him have difficulties as he knows he's not maintaining his cognitive abilities.
The most difficult thing for me, and thank God it's over, was the 3 weeks in which we were in isolation early in the epidemic. The last week of March and the first 2 weeks of April, when we were living confined to the apartment. We had everything brought to us, our meals and mail and everything else. But it was horrible being in isolation, and that's over, so that's not happened. And it keeps me from doing things that might be stupid that would get us to have to go into isolation again.
The most difficult aspect would be the same as those who are not living here. That is, how to maintain social distancing, how to maintain the masking, and most importantly, how to avoid high-risk situations.
Well, the most difficult aspect of being at Horizon House is the same set of aspects that everybody in the world has been suffering and dealing with, just a different application, different particular situations. Balanced against that was all the support that we have been receiving and the care that we have been receiving dealing with those difficulties.
What one piece of advice would you give friends considering a move to Horizon House during this time?
My first advice is be prepared to be spoiled, because every need is taken care of. My mother always said, "Don't spoil Sally, she's the baby of 9." And I raised my fist one day and say, "Mother, up in heaven, I am totally, totally spoiled." And every need has been met and cared for so lovingly, and it's been a wonderful, wonderful experience. We love it here.
Well, first of all, do it. And second, be patient, because there are so many things that we used to be able to do routinely that have been curtailed. Some of those things involve minor inconveniences. We can't use the dining room anymore. The gym that used to be open to us at any time, you now have to make a reservation to go down there to work out. But you can, and it's done very safely because there's ventilation, extra ventilation in there, and only a few people at a time that's socially distanced, and they wipe down everything afterwards. So it's an entirely safe environment, but it's not something that you can do at will. So those minor inconveniences are ones that will pass, but in the meantime, you have to be patient about them.
I think anybody would give the advice to friends is do it for all of the reasons that I've described about how wonderful it has been to live here. I would also caution people that when you come with all of the benefits we got, with feeling that our needs have been met, which they have, is to not expect that you will have the same freedom of movement as some of your friends are taking. We understand the fact that we have some limitations in our freedom of movement is for not only the good of the community, but for our own safety. I do have friends who don't live here who say, well, gee, we get together in our backyard with 6 people and distance, or I'm able to go out to the store, and I do, or heaven forbid, to the gym. So I think people need to be prepared for that. We are thinking of the whole community and the safety of the whole community, and therefore we're taking steps that may seem a little more restrictive to people. People here understand that, and I think you would too when you moved in, but it's something that you should know.
I'd say to friends who are considering moving here and are apprehensive about it, just do it. I had the misfortune to have my apartment that I lived in before on the market, and that got taken off the market. And that was not fun. But you know, it's sold now, it's all over now. I can't tell you how glad I am I'm living in a community like this rather than being stuck on my own somewhere else. I'm so grateful to be here.
If I had to provide one piece of advice to prospective residents, I would say plan ahead for how one can deal with loneliness. Loneliness could well become a very important health and medical issue, so it's important to have in mind what steps will you be able to take to minimize that loneliness. The capacities are here in Horizon House to deal with it, but you must be prepared to think about it and address it.
You know, there's really no one piece of advice that fits all. It depends on your circumstances, your circumstances in your abode that preceded the possibility of moving to a retirement home, your network of friends, of family. It varies from one person to another, every group, and what your needs are. But there is nothing per se about deciding to move into Horizon House or not. Nothing to inhibit that. And you should be considering it in a positive way that it really is meant to all of us who are here. Well, it's been quite a ride for me. I was elected president of the Residents' Council to begin my term in January of this year. I had 1 month of getting used to the job. I had another month of settling into the job. And then in the middle of March, we were hit by the pandemic. I remember in the middle of March, a sign on the in-house television saying, all events are canceled. All events and programs are canceled. All meetings are canceled, which was necessary for the benefit, for the health of everybody. So, you know, there I was, what to do? You know, should I take a long nap? You know, be a Rip Van Winkle? We obviously didn't know how long we'd be under these circumstances, whether it be 2 or 3 months, more than that. But, you know, there were opportunities that it was not something that just came to my mind, but folks in Horizon House were already taking advantage of the new television communication opportunities that are provided by companies like Zoom. They were getting together with a family, with the church choirs, things of that sort. They were becoming familiar with it, and it was clear to me that that was an opportunity for us to continue most of the things that we were doing, although we couldn't go to our performance hall and be together. We were able to continue having meetings using that technology of the committees that were responsible for planning activities, cultural activities, entertainment activities. They were able to, with the technology, produce programs that were available to people either participating directly as part of the Zoom meeting. Zoom was the particular company that we chose, and we were able to put those programs on a closed house, in-house TV for those who didn't want to participate or couldn't, for one reason or other, participate with the Zoom technology. So it was not very long before all that activity began to occur, began to increase, and within, I'd say by about August, starting in the middle of March when that sign was everything canceled, we were pretty much back to the level of activity that we were prior to the pandemic occurring.
Hello, I'm a physician, and my past includes hospital infection control and epidemiology, about 15 years experience. I also worked at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, for some years. When COVID struck Horizon House in late March, the administration formed a COVID task force, a group of about 10 senior managers who met daily to make decisions about activities that affect Horizon House residents. I was asked to join this task force. So each morning, the task force meets, reviews guidelines from the local, state, and federal governments, and discusses activities that we can safely undertake for Horizon House residents. As a part of that, I also formed a health advisory group. A group of 3 additional physicians and a nurse educator became what was known as the HAG. The purpose of the HAG really is to provide medical and scientific information to the residents. Its purpose is also to be available to answer their residents. But in my opinion, the most important use of the HAG is to the residents. It provides a valid scientific rationale for some of the measures we're asking the residents to follow. That's very important because I believe that if the residents believe and understand why we are asking these limitations, they are more likely to follow them. And it is because the residents here at Horizon House have been so religious in following our recommended guidelines, I think it has enabled us to continue to be free from coronavirus to date.
Director of Supported Living Charles Williams is a registered nurse with extensive experience in nursing, hospice, and executive level management within long-term care. Most recently, Charles served as the Regional Director of Clinical Services for a national organization and has been supporting several skilled nursing facilities throughout the Pacific Northwest. He is a member of the COVID task force who utilizes this knowledge to review, interpret, and implement the ever-changing policies that keep residents safe.
Hello, it's Charles Williams, the Director of Supported Living. I've been asked to speak with you today about a couple of items. In Supported Living, because we are a facility that's regulated by governing bodies, state and federal, we have done our best to follow the guidelines that have been put forth regarding the safety of our residents related to COVID-19. Back when the virus broke out in late February, early March, we created a task force, which I've been part of. So what we've done is we've gotten guidance from different governing bodies, such as CDC, and then we've gotten information from the governor's office. We've gotten information from the Department of Health and DSHS. So what we do is we take that information and we apply clinical knowledge and discussions related to the type of facility that we have here. We do have what's considered a long-term care facility where multiple people stay in the facility. So we have to be very cognizant because this is a virus that transmits through the air, and as we all know now, close proximity and mask wearing play a huge part of this. So what we do is we take that information and we try to make the best possible choices and decisions related to our residents. We take into account science, we take into account the population that we have here, and then we make the best possible decisions to keep our residents safe. That means that sometimes we are presented with ideas and guidance from those governing bodies, and then we have to try to make the best possible decision with that guidance. And as we all know with COVID, through the months that the country and the communities have dealt with this, we have often started with a certain amount of information, and then we've learned more, and as we've learned more, we've had to make changes and tweaks to the processes that we have put in place. So it's very important that that our residents, our families know that we are taking that as a guidance, and then we are trying to make the best possible decisions. It's not that we are making our own decisions, but we're trying to do what's right for the residents because we have to try to keep them safe from this. COVID has hugely impacted our country, and as we all know, it has been a very, very deadly virus and one that has had catastrophic effects on people, particularly the communities that we work with. So we take that information and we do our best to make the best possible decisions. Sometimes those do feel like they're a little bit restrictive, but very important that you know that we are taking in the account of our residents' safety and doing our best to make sure that we drive those decisions for safety purposes. We are taking the best possible guidance and then making the best possible decisions with that. We do take in mind that it's very important that we have social interaction and engagement of our residents, and COVID has significantly impacted that. We know that there are mandates that the governor has put forth that we have no visitors into supported living in Horizon House. We still think that those are very important because this is an environment that we have a little bit more control. And what I mean by that is that we can ensure that people are doing best practices such as maintaining the social distance, keeping the mask on. The mask is a huge part of the protection from the virus because, as we all know, it's airborne and droplet. It is spread by a cough or a sneeze. It can be spread even by just talking, so it's a very easily transmitted virus. So making sure that we are monitoring and ensuring that those best practices are in place. As new guidance and new information comes down, we will do our best to review it, make sure that our decisions are guided by science. I will add that it's a very political climate right now, and we are trying our best to make sure that our decisions are guided by best practice, science, good judgment, and we have people on our virus task force that have many years of clinical infection control experience, and we use and draw on that information to make sure that we are making the best possible decisions. Those decisions are very important for the safety of our residents. Thank you.